It's Wednesday, February 3rd, and on tonight's agenda, um, our main topic is going to be discussing the Old Colony school budget with the superintendent, Mr. Aaron Polanski, and the business manager, Miss Sarah Griffith. Um, so whenever you guys want to go, you can start discussing.
All right, let me share my screen. Give me 1 minute. Can you see my screen? Is that showing up okay for you?
Yes.
Yes.
So we talked to Julie a little bit and just to let her know that we're still working on our budget because we had some surprises from the state, and we want to make sure that we're putting forth the most responsible budget possible. So tonight's presentation isn't so much on the actual budget, it's really on the why behind some of the shifts. So I'll start with that. We like to start with our mission, and I won't read the slides, I'll just fast forward to the good stuff. Basically, what we're looking at with this year's budget is a response to growing interest from our member towns. And what that means is, and we talked a little bit about this with some members from Acushnet, on December 5th, 2019, the Old Colony District Committee met with representatives from our member towns to discuss the desire for expanded access and a vision for potential expansion. Old Colony currently, actually that should say receives, 275 plus in-district applications, or we received 275 in-district applications for the class of 2024. Effective with the class of 2024, all incoming freshmen will be from member towns. So last year's incoming class consisted of only member town students. We would like to expand programming to meet labor market demand. And what we mean by that is with the growth of Old Colony, we'd like to expand the Chapter 74 programs that we offer. That's in the long-term future, not in the short term. In April of 2020, however, Old Colony did submit a statement of interest to the Mass State Building Authority. In January of 2021, which was just recently, we were notified that we were invited to participate in what is called a senior study. That is not an invitation into a building project. It's simply a narrowing down of 71 schools to 30 schools with a greater potential to be invited in for a building project. This coming April, we will learn more about our status relative to actual eligibility for a building project. And I share that because it's really a part of the bigger equation that we want to share with everybody in all of our member towns. This is a look at the Acushnet application trends. And we have an admissions program that allows us to very closely track statistics. In 2018, we had 51 students from Acushnet apply to Old Colony. In 2019, we had 76 students apply. In 2020, we had 83 students apply. And as of a couple days ago, we have 84 students who have applied from the town of Acushnet to attend Old Colony as part of the class of 2025. You can see the growth has been consistent. The interest from Acushnet has been increasing. I think that's due in great part to the partnership that exists between our towns, our departments, and even our schools. We work very close with Dr. Bailey on a number of different initiatives. The next slide to me is even more interesting. In FY 21, our enrollment consisted, and that was as of October 1st, 2019, of 129 Acushnet students. As of October of this past year, we have 144 students from Acushnet. That marks an increase of 15 Acushnet students. And as we all know, dollars follow students. And so we did anticipate that there would be an increase in assessments. We did not know how much until we received, and we're still working on how much that might be. But when we received the governor's budget, we noticed that of all of the districts in the Commonwealth, 42 saw foundation growth. So of every school district in the Commonwealth, there were 42 schools that saw growth in their foundation enrollment. Of the 42 that saw foundation enrollment growth, 4 saw growth of over 5%. Old Colony is one of those 4 schools. However, state aid from for our foundation is not what we had hoped. And I share that with you because I think it's a really important part of the equation. We received a minimum aid of $30 per student. So for 498 foundation students, that's simply a $15,000 increase, which is hard to fathom. So the total applications are seen on the left. The total students accepted are seen on the right. In 2018, 24 of the 51 students were accepted. In 2019, 40 of the 76 students qualified and were accepted. In 2020, 50 of the 83 students qualified and were accepted. And this year, we're in the midst of interviews right now. And we'll have a better idea of what acceptance for the class of 2025 will look like later, probably in March is our guess, just to keep people informed. So beginning with the budget now being assembled in the 2021-2022 school year, the revenues previously generated through non-resident tuition will decline incrementally over a 4-year period. And what that means is, in the past, we had space where we were able to accept Freetown students because the number of students from in-district who qualified to attend was far fewer. Now what we're seeing is interest from member schools, from member towns skyrocketing, and as a result, we no longer have space to be able to accept Freetown students. And for the first time, we ran into that last year, and it was a very difficult piece for us to deliver to Freetown, but our obligation is to serve our member students first. So that non-resident tuition will be replaced by a combination of Chapter 70 funding and member town assessments as defined by our district agreement. In FY22, we saw an increase of the 31 students to our foundation and received a minimum foundation aid of $30 per student for a total of $14,940. The remainder of the increase is passed on to our member towns in the form of assessments that correlate with enrollment numbers and ability to pay as determined by the state. And when the state determines ability to pay, what they will do is they will look at your foundation numbers for Acushnet schools, and they'll try to observe how much of an increase or decrease the town of Acushnet saw with their local students. And for this year, I believe it was 85, a decrease of 85 students in Acushnet. Old Colony saw an increase of 15 Acushnet students, and the Acushnet students who attend Bristol Aggie, I think there are 10 of them, held steady from FY21 to FY22. So that's an overview really of the why behind the fiscal implications. We are in the midst of budget preparation, and that begins with the release of the governor's state budget proposal. That came out on the 27th of January. His recommendations were released, and as we stated, held unexpected surprises for us in Chapter 70 and the large increases to minimum local contributions. So we are working to navigate these consequences. We've actually made some calls to legislators to have some meetings to express some of our concerns, and we will be preparing an initial budget draft with hopes of bringing in members of all of our FinComs to make a budget presentation later in February, maybe early March at the latest. We know it's been a difficult year for everyone financially, so we will continue to work cooperatively. When we called Julie, really our first thought was the earlier we can let her know that we were seeing an increase, the better off we'll all be, and then we can take time to answer some questions for everyone. So that's really just a quick overview. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that people may have, and Sarah is here with me as well. So I will stop the share here and turn it over to folks who may have questions.
know there's lots of questions out here, and I'm just going to start by thanking you, Aaron and Sarah, because I know you're still in the middle of all the budgets and finalizing everything, and I really appreciate you guys coming to just kind of, show the group what we're looking at and answer questions. So at least as we're moving forward and as the budget gets finalized, we're involved in the process the whole time. So I know you guys are, early coming in here, but I do appreciate it. I think this will be helpful for the group.
I think we also want to come back, obviously, once the budget is more secure and we have a better idea of what it looks like. But I think, to your point, to help people understand the why is a really important piece of the puzzle. And our job is to be a transparent partner in every facet of what we do. So I think to just be here and give you just the overview is a really good start. But to your point, there may be questions. If we can answer them, we'll do our best. If we can't, we'll find the answers for you. But the floor is certainly open, and we're here to serve you to the best of our ability.
Yeah,
Would it be possible to obtain a copy of your presentation?
Absolutely. I could email it to you.
Okay, I'll email it to Kathy and she'll get it out to the rest of us.
Sure. I could actually email it to Julie while we're sitting here. So
Perfect.
that's
I'm relatively new to the committee, so you're talking about a foundation, and I'd like a definition of what that exactly is.
Sarah, do you want to jump in? Yeah, Sarah, do you want to jump in to add? Because I certainly think that you're our expert. You're our resident expert. So I think I want to make sure I utilize you and all of your knowledge.
So foundation, when we speak about foundation enrollment, it is the enrollment at Old Colony that drives all of our aid. So when Mr. Plansky speaks to, a foundation enrollment of 498 students, that is what our Chapter 70 is based on, and that is what the minimum local contribution that is calculated by the state is based on. The state decides what Old Colony should be spending to educate a student and decides the town's ability to pay to help fund that. And I think one of the really important pieces, just to add to the presentation that was just given, is with the 15, and this is public knowledge, it is on DESE's website, DESE Finance, Chapter 70, complete formula spreadsheet. With the 15 students that Acushnet increased at Old Colony, the state has increased Acushnet's minimum local contribution to Old Colony by $246,000. So that right there is sort of like a beginning point for statutory method, which is just Mass General Law, how we would formulate a budget and assess our member towns. Our total minimum local contribution went up $778,000 from our member towns. So that's huge. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been with Old Colony since the beginning of 2014, and before I was with another school district. That is a very large shift. Acushnet, bore quite a bit of the brunt of that, as well as a few of our other member towns, Lakeville and Mattapoisett, also see large increases in their minimum local contribution for this coming budget.
And Gail, just in layman's terms too, just to kind of give you additional clarification, our foundation budget will only include member students, resident students.
Right.
So that's the really important differentiating piece, because I'll tell you, coming into my role as a former principal, I leaned very heavily on Sarah and her expertise to help me learn all of the intricacies associated with this, because I did not go to school to study finance. When we saw these numbers, I can tell you I have learned more in the last probably 2.5 weeks about finance than I knew coming in, and it's been a wonderful experience. However, the most important explanation that we can give you is that when we see non-resident students from the town of Freetown who are attending Old Colony, they are not included in the, and I'm going to put quotes up, the foundation. The 498 are our member students. They are our foundation enrollment. what will happen is the non-resident tuition that we receive from Freetown is used as a revenue source.
Gotcha.
We are going to see that revenue source decrease by 1/4 over a 4-year period of time, because with every new class that comes in, that revenue source, 1/4 of that revenue source generated graduates. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
Yep.
the assessment that would have come from that revenue source shifts to our member schools. Is that a clear explanation?
It is. I guess the
Okay.
other question, though, is you were caught off guard by the amount of the increase. So do you understand what's driving that?
We do. What they said was, well, Acushnet has 85 fewer students in town. They have an ability to pay. That's why I put quotes up.
Yes.
And I said, I'm not okay with that.
You
That
mean
was
in
my
the public,
response.
what do you mean in town? You mean in the
At
public
your-
schools?
Yes.
In the
and
public
So the
schools,
enrollment there is
Local.
declining? And it's,
there
has
are 3.
declined.
okay,
I can let me show you, let me share my screen again, because I think this is a really great opportunity to provide information, if I may.
Sorry, Mr. Clancy, while we are pulling that up, this calculation was supposed to have been revised, right? Because at some point it was based on income taxes of the residents, and if the income taxes of the residents increase over time, they must pay more in real estate taxes, and therefore the towns have a greater ability, which is a correlation I never understood either.
Right.
So this is the revised
Yes, it
calculation.
is.
You got to be kidding me.
Yes,
Okay.
this
Here-
was just released, Sue, last Wednesday. So these are the numbers that the state of Massachusetts is asking the school districts to build their budgets based on.
So this calculation has now said the town of Acushnet can afford more.
So
Yes.
basically, yeah, and Sue, this is what they show. This is what they went over with us. I'll just show you. Can you see the sheet?
Yes, we can.
yes.
Some people have never seen it before, I'm sure, and other people may be more familiar with it. So I just share it because, again, if you're new to finance, you may not have seen it before. But what they do at the state is they show you different columns that represent different forms of education, right? And I'm going to just, again, try to speak in a simple, in the simplest terms I can. This is Acushnet. This might be Ford Middle School, the elementary school, but these are the Acushnet schools right here.
Aaron, can you just zoom in a little bit on it?
Sure. Let me.
If
I think I can.
yeah,
Uh,
right up at the top at the plus sign. Yeah,
Right here.
get in there. Oh,
Oops.
go back one.
Too much. Well, back a couple.
Oh, you
Maybe I
must
flipped
have
it.
clicked flipped. Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on.
Sorry, it is kind of hard to see. Zoom in a little bit more,
If I go full screen, will it be easier?
maybe. Zoom in.
Tell me when to stop.
It's good.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. So basically what you see here is these are enrollment numbers from October 1st, 2019. Those direct the 21 budget, FY21 budget. At that time, Acushnet had 1,292 students in town. They had 129 students at Old Colony and 10 at Bristol County Agricultural High School. Another great place. I used to be the principal there. Love it.
Mhm.
Now, here is FY22. This is enrollment as of 10/1/2020. And what you see is the decline here of 85 students, an increase of 15 students here, and a hold steady of 10 at Bristol Aggie. That being said, what they're saying is that this decline allows you to better afford this year. What I argued was, especially in COVID, we don't know how many of those kids are actually going to come back. You could
And-
see a huge return.
And one of the points that I made on the same call, and I've seen this happen time and time again, just because enrollment decreases at the local elementary, middle school, does not mean those schools will be able to cut their budget. Those two things are not apples to apples. I've seen it happen so many times. You can't say our enrollment decreased, so that means, my elementary school is going to cut 2 teachers. That's not going to happen. It doesn't happen. So that was one of the points that we made when we were on our call with Desi, is I understand that they are the ones assessing DOR, assessing the town's ability to pay. But just because your enrollment goes down does not mean your local school district is going to be able to cut their budget. So that's kind of, it creates tension among the different bodies.
We've also made, just so folks are aware, we've also made some calls to other sources for advocacy purposes. We'll keep people posted as we learn more, but it's not something that we just kind of say, oh well, no big deal. That is not how we respond. We are advocating on behalf of all of our member towns right now, just to see what we can do to alleviate some of the financial pressures that could result from increased assessments. We fully expected increased assessments. I know John was part of the meeting that we had some time ago. He joined us, and we talked about what it means if we don't accept non-residents and we replace those non-residents with member town students because of the demand. And we know money follows students. That's something that we're very aware of. I think everyone is very aware of. To this extent is not something that we really expected. And that's what we're sharing with you tonight, is we're doing everything from an advocacy standpoint to make sure that we can articulate the concerns we have and see what kind of adjustments, if needed and if possible, can be made. And we'll have a better sense of where we're going to go with our own internal decisions to try and make this easier for everybody. We have a budget subcommittee meeting coming up on February 10th. So we should have some information soon thereafter. We typically invite members of our FinCom and towns in to sit with us and look at that more polished draft once it's complete. So you'll be hearing from us with an
So,
invitation.
Aaron, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So is Freetown permanently out of the picture?
Yep.
They are.
Yes. So we really, in fairness to our member districts, we can't, by legislation does not allow us to accept non-resident students if we have qualifying member students. And we owe our students every opportunity we can offer them to attend Old Colony. We routinely see over 250 member students apply for less than 150 slots. That means that 100 students, there's the possibility that 100 students don't have the opportunity. So over a 4-year period of time, I did some calculations as we were looking at the statement of interest. Over a 4-year period of time, we see over 1,000 applications for just over 500 slots at Old Colony, which is another reason why we'd like to expand what we're able to offer so that we can really extend invitations to as many students as are possibly interested in Old Colony. I think we're doing some great things. We continue to have, attendance rates of 97%, graduation rates of 99%. We're seeing students enrolled in early college courses. We've added advanced placement courses. We have articulations with all 13 of our programs for college credit. And so I think as a parent of 6 children, if I could go back with my 2 oldest daughters who are paying lots of tuition for a college education, and I see some of our electrical students who graduate and within 2 years of graduating are making close to $100,000 a year as electrician apprentices with no college loans. There are a lot of options for kids these days. And I think that we have other students who go on to college and are very successful. We have a student who works at, a graduate who works at Google. They graduated from Brown University. So there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of different types of students, and we want to make sure we open the door to as many of those students as possible.
Aaron, can I ask a couple questions?
Of course.
Number one, I assume that are you capped by the state at 600, or is that just what you're capable of?
We couldn't even accommodate, that's a great question, Ron. We couldn't even accommodate 600.
Mm-hmm.
So what we'll do is we try to pay attention to the tributaries in and the tributaries out.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I mean by that is attrition, right? When we take 150 students in a class, we try to keep an eye on that class and see what our attrition patterns look like. But what we're seeing is we're graduating more and more students. So we're seeing fewer and fewer students leave and more students stay. So what used to be a class of, let's say, 150 could become a class of, let's say, 135, where we don't backfill until their sophomore year because we can't accommodate 600. We just can't fit 600 in the building. That's another reason for the statement of interest that was delivered to the MSBA. And that is, we want to be able to accommodate more students. We'd like to add Chapter 74 programs, things like plumbing or HVAC or biotech, maybe an agricultural program of some sort, a horticulture or vet tech. But there are a lot of options for us to expand that are untapped right now. And we certainly have the interest and demand from our member students. And we're living in a building that was built in 1975. It looks great, but the bones of it aren't great. I would equate it to a really well put together person who has a heart attack. I hate to say that, but you know, if you've ever looked at someone and you say, man, that person was so healthy, but their insides weren't. You know, if you were to dig up our floors and look at some of the issues that we have to deal with our pipes that are rusted or some of our systems, those are of concern. Our maintenance staff does an incredible job of keeping up the building, but some of the things that we don't see are beyond our control, right? So we want to make sure that as we proceed, we're providing upkeep and the best possible product for our member towns because it's a significant investment.
Aaron, now of the 600, or I guess it's less, since maybe it's 550 or whatever, are in the school.
Yeah.
How many are Freetown residents now?
68.
68.
And next year it will be, we'll graduate 21 from this class, so it will be 47.
Mhm.
And then we'll probably half that 47, and then that last half will graduate. So what we saw was the first year of the push, and that will be followed by 3 additional years where those students will graduate, member students will come in. And what I said to our legislators is, this is not a 1-year thing. This is a 4-year process, and that's where our concern comes from, is that basically those revenues need to be supplemented by either assessment, aid, or a combination of the two. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I can assume that there's a 68 graduate, there may be room, I'm not sure what the percentage of Acushnet is in that, but it might be 15 to 20 more students that are going to probably come from this district that we're going to have to, you know, obviously the money, as you said, follows the students. So it's going to continue to rise incrementally for the next 3 years. Would that be right?
Yeah, and you know, last year we saw an increase of 15 from Acushnet.
Mhm.
This year, as I forecast, I've seen a huge jump in Rochester numbers, you know, in terms of their applications. So it could vary. We never know which town will see the largest increases. A few years ago, Sarah and I went out to lunch with members of the Rochester FinCom to have a similar conversation to what we're having tonight, because their numbers had grown by, I think, 9. And we've had similar conversations with Lakeville because they've grown significantly this year. So we always say surprises are never good. We wanted to contact Julie as early as possible to make sure she was in the loop. And obviously she was able to communicate with this group as well. I'm glad that we're able to be here tonight with everybody. And we'll continue to be as transparent as we can in our communication so that there are no surprises. And if something doesn't feel like it's an easy piece for us, it's our job to advocate at all levels. And that's what we're doing, is we're very proactive with our advocacy, both with DESE and at the state legislative level.
And I guess I just have one more, not to hog the entire time, but I know when I sat back in a meeting late last fall, I think it was, where we were talking about, you know, making Freetown a member town, and I guess that they went in a different direction. Part of the discussion focused around, you know, this application we have to the state that you know, to grow the programs and build the facilities. I forget the term now, there's too many acronyms, but was part of that submittal based upon what Freetown's you know, contribution may be, or did that change now that Freetown exited the you know, that discussion, or does that need to be redone now or reconsidered?
No, actually, we submitted that simply because we knew that with or without Freetown, our member interest was so significant that we would need, if we wanted to accommodate more students, we would need to expand infrastructure. So with Freetown, it means that a cost would be shared 6 ways. Without Freetown, it means that a cost is shared 5 ways. And that's basically how we view it, is that with or without them, we feel as though it's the right time for Old Colony to be considering expansion, given the needs of our member students and our ability to serve them in the best capacity possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one question.
Sure.
Pandemic issues with students as far as stress, even sometimes mental health issues. How are you going to address those issues in your budget? Or are you, has there been any discussion with that?
We've, yeah, we're very focused on the mental health of the students. I think that we have, actually, our assistant principal is in communication with a daily list. So every day he emails out attendance and lists that identify students who may be struggling. At our weekly administrative team meetings, we have conversations where we identify students who are on, we call it the radar, to make sure that no one slips through the cracks. I think the other pieces, we've talked about bringing in speakers to talk to the students about mental health. As recently as just this Monday, instead of having screen time because of the impending storm, we simply called a snow day for no other reason than I thought it was the right thing to do, to give kids a break from their screens and let them have the old time snow day where they could just put their feet up. And to be quite honest, the fact that accumulation didn't start till 11 didn't bother me. The thing that bothered me most was that it was actually a crappy snowstorm and they probably didn't get to go sledding. So, I think that we have an obligation to balance, John, that's a really good point, just to find the balance. And unfortunately, there is no balance right now. We could tell you that we're doing the best we can, but I don't think that we can do enough for anyone. It's not just kids. When you think about the impact of screen time and the inability for me to come over and shake your hand and say hello and tap you on the shoulder or whatever it may be that we usually do. When someone's new as a town administrator, Julie, I hate to break it to you, but we usually take them out to lunch and you get to sit in front of us in a screen and we just talk shop with you. So, I promise your lunch is coming, but the intimacy, and it is that, it's this beautiful thing that happens when you socialize and you get to know people on a different level. And I think that that's missing from this Zoom world and this virtual world. And one thing we're super proud of is 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Our students are in school for 2 weeks at a time, every 2 weeks, and they get to see us. And I get to walk into classrooms and say to kids, hey, I am so happy to see you today. This is the best part of my week. And it is. And it's why we got into education. I promise you, when I got into education, it was because of coaching. I never said, I cannot wait to be a superintendent. Nobody ever says that, I promise you. Things happen and you just say like, oh my gosh, I'm a superintendent, but that wasn't my plan. I'm an educator because I want to be a servant leader. I'm an educator because I love children and I love helping make their lives better. And I think the best way to do that is in person. So John, your question's great. We're putting speakers in place to try we're lining up a few speakers that are going to talk about mental health. We're looking to bring athletics back, hopefully with a vote from the school committee in some capacity for the fall 2 season, but that is up to our school committee. We'll have to wait and hear from them. But I think that it's been a very difficult trek for a lot of people. And again, it's not just kids, it's adults too. And our job is to approach it with a level of understanding, grace, and flexibility. And I'm very proud of the way that the Old Colony District has done that, not only for the kids, but also for our staff.
I appreciate your direction on this.
I appreciate the question, John. It's a thoughtful one, and it puts kids and staff first. So thanks for asking it.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Polanski or Ms. Griffith tonight?
I guess the only other thing I would ask is, we see the preliminary numbers of the budget, there's more, government aid perhaps coming in for the pandemic. We're yet to see what that may be. I know there was some in the last bill. Do you anticipate anything, any significant, you think, I'm not asking for what I know you can't commit, but you think it's going to go, where would you think it's going to go in one direction or another based upon the tea leaves that you're seeing now, Aaron?
I think we're going to continue to see different pockets of funding, if that makes sense. I call them pockets because every now and then someone says, "Oh, I just heard about additional aid that's coming out that will help with X, Y, Z." Some of the aid is very specific, and other sources of aid allow wider parameters for spending. So I think we'll see pockets of aid. We really have our feelers out. Things that aren't pandemic related are things like the Skills Capital Grant that Governor Baker supports. We've received over $1 million in grant funding over the last 3 years in competitive grants. So we're very proud of that, and we chase those aggressively. There's another round of Skills Capital funding coming up, and we'll be submitting a proposal for probably $500,000 of funding to offset costs associated with our Chapter 74 programs. But those are competitive and they're not guaranteed. So I can tell you that we keep our eye on it, that we're very aggressive in the way we approach it, and that we are astute in the way that we prepare for those things. But the guarantees, when we get the yeses, we have little celebrations back in the office, and then we, get back to business and look for the next grant. But we are currently working on something that would allow us to offset the costs to our member towns if we were successful by anywhere from probably $300,000 to $500,000. So again, we're aggressive in our efforts to secure that funding, Ron. And it comes in a multitude of ways. We keep our eyes open for it. And if anyone sees anything, on your end, please let us know, because we are certainly partners in that. I know that at one point, Julie had reached out to us and said something about additional funding for COVID. And I just sent something out to all of our member towns out of respect for everybody's situation to get a feel for where everyone was coming from. And Julie, we'll get back to you about, what we are or aren't interested in doing, but we can have that conversation at a separate time. We do appreciate the partnership and the communication that has come from Acushnet, though. I can't tell you, every time I hang up with one of you or a member of the select board, I feel like I just want to call back and have you keep talking, because you guys are so supportive of all that we do, and we really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron.
Very kind words.
Well, we had the conversation not too long ago, so you're front row. You know what I'm talking about.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, Aaron and Sarah, I thank you guys for joining us tonight. Look forward to hearing you again in the future when all the numbers become more clear. But thanks for the great overview and your presentation. It was very helpful for us. And, we'll definitely use that going forward to plan accordingly.
That's great. I just sent a copy via email to Julie so she can distribute that to the group. And if you're in need of any other information, you know how to reach me, just a phone call or an email away. If I don't get back to you within an hour or two, I'm probably on a milk carton. So, I'll be quick, I promise.
Thank
I'll always
you.
get back to you quickly. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Great night.
Okay, so I guess next on the agenda we'll be discussing, well, first of all, does anybody have any discussion about the Old Colony budget right now?
I guess the only thing is, it's going to be up significantly more. Should we rethink how we're asking for budgets from the other departments? Like, should we be asking for something with a reduction instead of level funding?
Well, I think our own, I think potentially our own, elementary and middle school are going to have to take some of this into consideration.
I agree. The schools need to be if anybody needs to be sensitive.
We're definitely going to probably need some help on their end, for sure.
I'll mention too, I'll just mention too, I know obviously our school is still working on their budget, but this Friday, myself and Melissa, we have a meeting with Dr. Bailey and Kristen Flynn to kind of talk about what they're looking at, and I'll definitely be mentioning this And like Aaron said, obviously the pandemic weighs into it. 85 students is a really high number for Acushnet, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I have to imagine the majority of those are COVID related. Obviously, I think we have had the trend every year of having less students in general, but 85 is a huge jump. So I think that's going to be a big COVID issue, and I'm kind of surprised that the state hasn't taken a different stance on it. Like Aaron said, that they've pushed back that this isn't this isn't like an actual drop, and you're not going to see actual costs alleviated by the 85 students necessarily, because they all might jump back this fall if the pandemic is over. So I'll definitely bring it up to the schools, and maybe I can get them to come in early too and kind of give you a preliminary update of what they're looking at, especially with these numbers.
Yeah, just something would be great, so we could get a sense on where they are.
I agree.
It would be helpful, because right now I'm just like, how do we balance this year? Last year was, and this year's like looking.
It's not getting any better.
Dismal.
I mean, I'm like, are we going to be short like 700,000-800,000? I mean, that's what it's feeling like to me. That's going to be hard. Like that, there's some painful decisions, and so say come next year we do get those 85 students back that the state has decided we don't get back. What sort of what options do we have to say, see, we couldn't cut, like you shouldn't have taken the money away? Like, do we have any options, or we just gotta grin and bear it for the year?
Yeah. I agree. I think the number she said was 246,000. That was assessed just based on those 85 students, and that's huge. You figure if that wasn't put in place, we're not looking at an out of this world increase from Old Colony. It'd be in like the 100,000, a little over $100,000 mark, which is, I think, typical for what we've seen in the last few years, especially with the increase of students. That would be much more manageable.
Right.
But adding that extra 246,000 just from the state's assessment is that's what's going to kill us.
Well, if you look at, when I did take a look at their initial request, there's 2 items that pretty much drive the increase: salaries, right, contractual, and then insurance. Literally, the bulk of their increase can be narrowed down to the majority of it coming from those 2 buckets. Like, then you got to start looking at what else can you cut. Right? We at the point where we're back to cutting bodies. Is that really what's left?
So I think we still have a lot that's in play for this year. We're looking at level funding budgets, but level funding our state revenue. And that's, the state revenue is still very pliable. The governor put out his projections, which is level funded, essentially level funded to this past year, which is level funded to the year before. And I don't know what the other groups are going to decide and what the final budget would be. If it stays level funded, I think that's a huge opportunity for us to be able to manage these costs better, because we have plugged in a 5% reduction. And I think that's reasonable to keep that right now where we don't know what's happening. But if the state decides to level fund, we do have a little bit of wiggle room there. I mean, that it's about $400,000 that this cost alone will, absorb the whole thing. But I think it'll help. So I think there's still time to work it out. And we have the same, once I get the draft budgets at the end of this week, I should have them to you guys. Just finishing up a few things, but we have the same kind of idea. We have some salary increases, although we haven't plugged in really any yet, because the selectmen need to decide what COLA they want for all the non-union personnel, and we're working on union negotiations for all the unions except for the fire and EMS. The only big increases that we have really are pension, and our fixed costs of like health insurance and liability insurance, and then the vocational school. So we're kind of in that same boat. We're keeping things as tight as we possibly can here.
So Julie, I'm sure it's going to be a real challenge to come in level funded when the various unions mandate salary increases, no matter what type of environment we're in. And I mean, we're in a pandemic. Any thoughts on freezing that as well?
I mean, I have my own thoughts. I don't want to speak for the selectmen because they're still working through everything, but I don't think we're at the point where we need to freeze people. I have to say, from an employee standpoint, our employees have been working really diligently throughout the whole pandemic. So it's also a hard one. Obviously we have to afford what we can afford. But I think at the same time, we have employees who have been pushing through all kinds of situations. We've had many departments that have been short-staffed because of cuts for this year. And so it's also hard we have to find a good balance, but I don't want to discourage or jump to doing a freeze, because I really truly think our employees have been amazing this year. They've all worked so hard through all of the challenges, and I don't want to minimize that either.
Well, that's certainly understandable, but I'm thinking from, like a private business perspective, where sometimes, unfortunately, depending on circumstances, in a particular year, a raise cannot be given. So I'd rather have somebody maintain their job versus the other.
Yeah.
So
it's not off the table. I'm hopeful right now that we're going to be able to balance all of this. But obviously, yeah, if push comes to shove and we hit an endpoint, those are definitely things that we have to consider.
I know it's an uncomfortable topic to bring up, but I think it's something that has to be mentioned. It's probably not a popular thing to mention, but it's, as a finance committee, I think we have to put everything on the table, especially with what we're dealing with right now.
How about
I agree.
How about
agree
a
with that.
hiring freeze or some kind like that? Has that been spoken of?
That's what we've been working in for this year. There are many departments that cut positions. One that just jumps to the top of my head right now is the treasurer collector's office. Right when the pandemic started, they had 4 full-time personnel in their office, and one of the full-time people found a job elsewhere and left, and we decided not to fill in that position, and we kept it out of the budget for FY21 as a cost-saving measure. So we haven't filled that. We've had a lot of moves like that where we're not looking to add new positions, but we have had a lot of turnover. Not a lot of turnover, but we have, for instance, in my office, one of the employees in my office is retiring. And so, we're looking at that, but where these are positions that are needed, where we are looking to refill them. Because from my perspective, going into FY21, we've cut as lean as we can, employee-wise and job management-wise. I don't want to hit a point too where we're not able to keep up with the work. Like, again, the treasurer collector's office, they're doing fantastic with 3 people doing 4 people's jobs, all the work of 4 people. And I think they're doing a great job balancing it, but it's been tough. Yeah. So we haven't added any new positions, but the ones that are there, that if people have left, we have filled them in.
As much as I enjoy our time together, I'm not going to look forward to this year's budget hearings. That's all I'm going to say.
I'll second that.
Well, I'm glad
We'll be
my
fine.
first real budget, then this is going to be fun.
We'll make it through. We'll be fine.
Ron, you might need more than 1 glass of wine, buddy.
Might bring out the scotch next.
The hard liquor. The hard liquor.
So, Kathy, do we have anything set up, like a mock schedule for hearings?
Oh, I was actually
Not yet.
supposed to work on that this weekend, but I was like really sick, so I did not get to do that. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right, we still have some time.
Yeah, I'll work with Kathy over the next 2 days like that. I'm just finishing up some things with the budget so I can get it out to you all as a draft. And I'll try to talk to Kathy either tomorrow or Friday and see if we can come up with a list and reach out to everyone. I don't think it'll be hard to get departments in to meet with you because, again, pretty much everyone has a level funded budget. So I'm sure they're not, there's no anxiety to present to you. They're giving it to you as it is. But I think, yeah, Kathy, we can work on that. I'll give you a call tomorrow and we'll see if we can kind of nail it all down.
Yeah, and I can help with that too if you need to reach out to department heads. I don't mind that.
Awesome.
Julie, can we get like?
So will next week be too soon to set a meeting? Will you need an extra week, or are we going to be good to go for next week? With a couple of easy departments
Yeah.
to just get started.
Yeah, I think we should be able to find people to fill in for Wednesday.
Okay.
And Julie, when you get that info, like, can we get a sense of like what sits in free cash and just kind of where we have all the levers that we can pull from?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep. I'll give you guys all the spreadsheet that I have with all that info on it.
Because we don't want to hit stabilization, right? We don't want.
No.
Yeah.
And again, I think, we've set ourselves up pretty well for this year. We cut the 5%, so we have 400,000 about that is essentially extra for this year because we plan on a 5% cut from the state level funded, so that, aside from other monies that we may be short in like local receipts, we're going to net that money that's going to be added to our free cash for next year. And again, we're looking at level funding, which is still that 5% cut into next year. So I just think if things work out well and everything is level funded from the state and we kind of work our way out of the pandemic, then we're going to have, a good amount that's been built up that we can help, at the time. I'm sure there's going to be things that we've neglected that we'll need to use it for. But I think at the same time, if things don't look great, we've given ourselves a good cushion that we can, not have to make huge layoffs and things like that to balance ourselves out.
Well, it was a good thing that we did that cut last year because that's our saving grace this year.
Yes.
That truly is the saving grace. So we were conservative and we are very grateful we were because it helps soften the blow this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
We lucked out. I was pretty confident that our 5% wasn't going to be enough for this year. I thought that we would end up seeing like a 10% cut from the state. So we lucked out with that too, that the state ended up coming through and level funding. And again, hopefully this year, if the vaccine is coming out and, we round through the pandemic somewhat, if the state starts seeing more, increases in revenue on their side, maybe they'll be able to afford the level fund again for us, which would be great.
Yeah. And John, I know you're really into kind of the school department stuff. Do you know that formula that the state uses to calculate?
It's a very complicated formula. So you have to, I really do not fully up on that formula. I was going to.
So the new formula, right? Because the old formula had flaws, but it sounds like the new formula has flaws in it too.
Right.
Like we need, what are our options for getting somebody to go in front of whoever it is, the state, DESE, to kind of point out maybe some of those errors in the thinking.
I would not. One comment: I would not rule out use of stabilization. Rule out the use of stabilization. It should be one of our options. When a push comes to shove, catastrophic, reduction in force can be really, set this community back many years. So, all options should be on the table, and including that one. Including, as I say, a freeze in salaries rather than the reduction in force. All those hard choices Gonna have to
Yeah.
be, you know,
But
on the table.
yeah, and I think all the choices are there. I guess the concern is using savings to pay your operating expenses. You know,
But we
when
have
does that stop? Because then the savings runs out, right? That's the issue with using
Right.
stabilization for
Right, right.
non-emergency.
in the
Right,
long
that-
term, but we are an emergency.
Yeah,
You know, the state is
yeah.
an emergency. They're not getting additional revenues, you know, due to the pandemic. In some areas they are. So we have to watch all those,
Yeah.
all those nuances, so to
Agreed.
speak.
I think, no, I agree. I think everything is on the table. Maybe I'm just an optimist. I think we're going to end up being pretty good where I'm hopeful that we won't need to dip into that. But I agree. It's on the table. I'm hopeful that all these changes that are happening are meaning good things for the state bouncing back and towns therefore bouncing back. But yep, I mean, the freeze and pay, layoffs, stabilization, all of that is definitely on the table if we need it. And that's what that was there for. The stabilization was put for this very reason. If we can avoid it, I definitely don't want to use it, but if we need it, that's what it's there for.
So Julie, if we make out okay, which I'm gonna be optimistic, I think maybe we should increase the celebrations line item. We can do one big party.
It has to be through Zoom, Mike. It has to be through Zoom.
No, it's got to be like in person.
Let's,
Parking lot, socially distancing.
The end of the year, you know.
you know, let's toss either a 2.5 override.
Okay, that will
You
be.
get a few people's attention.
Okay. Does anybody have any old business to discuss?
No?
No old business. Any new business?
Are we good for
No
next
new
week then? Are
business.
is that a go?
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
plan on Wednesday, and by Friday we'll get you all the info and let you know. If for some reason we can't get anyone for Wednesday, you'll know by Friday. But I think we can get some departments together.
You know what I just realized? I realized that when we started the meeting, I did not open the meeting properly. It just dawned on me because now I'm going to close the meeting, and I did not open the meeting properly.
Back and edit the tape.
So can we go all the way back and start?
Yeah, let's do it right.
That was a rookie move. All right. So that being said, if there's no further business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That adjourns tonight's meeting.